The Play-by-Play Student Sports Network. The best students of sports.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we are doing a new show for you. Around the world of sports with the students of sports. We have some of our virtual activity students ready to report about the biggest stories in sports that are going on. And there is no bigger story in sports than obviously the World Series, as both teams are now determined heading into the World Series, as the Arizona Diamondbacks took care of business last night against the Phillies. So it'll be the Phillies versus the Arizona Diamondbacks versus the Texas Rangers in the World Series. So we're going to go to Jack for his report on what's about to happen with the World Series.
All right, so I'm Jack O'Shea here with the Play-by-Play Student Sports Network. Entering into the World Series, which starts this Friday, the Texas Rangers are favored to win the World Series. Two big things that will determine it with the pitching and the hitting. Each team has two good starters. The Rangers with Jordan Montgomery and Nathan Eovaldi. The Diamondbacks with Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly. And then after that, question marks surrounding pitchers such as Brandon Pfaadt and Max Scherzer. Offensively, the Rangers, they've both played 12 games, but the Rangers have scored 19 more runs, although you can argue that the Diamondbacks have faced better pitchers. They faced Corbin Burns, Freddie Peralta, Clayton Kershaw, Zach Wheeler, and Aaron Nola. Two big factors that I think that will most likely play a part in this are the 3 and 4 starters for the rotation in the bullpen. Will Max Scherzer, of course, be better than he was the past uphill game in games 3 and 7 where he got roughed up by the Astros? And then will the Rangers bullpen, if they can manage to get a lead, will they be able to hold firm? The Rangers have blown 33 saves, which is third most in the Major League Baseball this year, the most of any team in the postseason. And then the last thing of note is home field advantage. The Rangers are 1-3 at home, whereas the Diamondbacks are 3-1.
All right, thank you, Jack, for the awesome report. I got a few more questions for you about it. As a Phillies fan, I saw the Arizona Diamondbacks up close and personal, and the Texas Rangers kind of are similar offensively to the Phillies, where they hit a lot of home runs. Do you think the Arizona pitching staff can hold them down like they did the Phillies for pretty much every game except for Game 2 of the NLCS?
Well, I mean, in Game 1 they hit 3 homers. I think what sets the Rangers' offense apart is they're coming in more hot. Of course, they scored 11 runs in Game 7 and 8 in Game 6 of the ALCS. Whereas when Game 6 and Game 7 come around, the Phillies are kind of demoralized. They've lost the last 2 games. Whereas in Games 1 and 2, when the Phillies come in with momentum, I think they hit more home runs. They say baseball is a timing sport. I think with the Rangers coming in hot for the momentum, I think they'll be able to get more long balls off the Diamondbacks pitchers.
And you talked about the pitchers in Eovaldi for Texas Rangers and Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen for Arizona. Zach Gallen honestly didn't have that great of a series for the Arizona Diamondbacks against the Phillies, but Brandon Pfaadt kind of did. Do you think the third starter and Brandon Pfaadt could be a big difference in this series?
Yeah, I feel like Brandon Pfaadt, I mean, I know he's a rookie, but he's going up against Max Scherzer, which, I mean, that doesn't sound great, obviously, but he didn't do super well in his 2 ALCS starts. He's coming back from that injury he suffered in mid-September. I think he's going to be a big X factor in this series. Same thing with Max Scherzer.
All right, so let's just go down the list real quick, checklist, and get your pick real quick, and then we'll move on to the next topic. We really appreciate Jack. All right, so if you compare the two teams, starting pitching, who do you give the check mark to? Do you give it to the Texas Rangers or the Arizona Diamondbacks?
Well, Jordan Montgomery and starting pitching is interesting. Nathan Eovaldi and Merrill Kelly, they've both been great. Jordan Montgomery got roughed up in that game against the Orioles. But other than that, he's been good. And Zach Gallen, he got roughed up. So based on those two and considering the other two are all X factors, I think the Rangers have a slight edge.
Slight edge there. Okay, so the other opposite end of pitching, you said Texas doesn't have that great a bullpen, and we saw what the bullpen for the Diamondbacks. So are you going with the Diamondbacks for the better bullpen in the series?
Yeah, the Rangers, they blew 33 saves, including one in Game 5, so I guess now they're up to 34. Whereas Paul Sewald, the former Mariner, came over to the D-backs at the deadline. He's been good. He's got 6 saves. I don't think he hasn't blown any.
All right. Fielding wise, who do you have the advantage to?
Fielding. Well, I mean, if it was the Phillies, I would have said the Rangers, but Diamondbacks, I mean, they've got some young outfielder. They got Corbin Carroll. Corey Seager, he's not the best defensive shortstop, and I'm not really sure about that. I might give it to the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, they were one of the best fielded teams in baseball year long, so that would make sense. And lastly, but maybe not least, hitting wise, which lineup?
I feel like kind of same thing with the Phillies lineup. The Diamondbacks lineup is kind of top heavy, whereas the Rangers lineup is really deep. You got All-Star Josh Young batting 8th. So I think the Rangers have a more deep lineup.
All right, sounds good. So last but not least, who are you picking to win the series?
I think I'm going to say Rangers in 6th. I think they get their first World Series win in franchise history.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Jack. And I mean, I'll be rooting for the Rangers. I don't know if I'll be watching very much, but I'll be rooting for the Rangers.
All right. Thank
Take
you.
care. Thank you, Jack. All right. So we move from the World Series preview that Jack did so well at. Now we're going to move to the NFL. Jacob Muncie from Detroit is going to give us an NFC preview. Jacob, give us the preview of the NFC and where we stand heading into Week 8.
Hello, my name is Jacob Muncie from the Student Sports Network, and we're going to jump right in with the NFC playoff picture. The Eagles and Jalen Hurts. Hurts averaging, his completion percentage is 67. He has 15 touchdowns and 1,800 passing yards. But I feel like this Eagles team, on the hand, I mean, their defense, I feel like, is definitely going to be their struggling point on this team. And other than that, I mean, this offense has been great. DeAndre Swift averaging almost 5 yards a carry, and also A.J. Brown almost getting about 16 yards per catch. But then on comes this other really, really good team that the only way that they cannot succeed is if injuries happen, but that's what happened over the past 2 weeks because they have Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, one of the best defenses. But if they deal with injuries, they're obviously not going to be able to get up there, but they have a plus 400 chance to get the 1 seed. And then the Detroit Lions, a team that a lot of people are really high on after a great end of the season last year. I mean, Jared Goff, he's been playing pretty good. He's got 2,000 passing yards almost and 13 touchdowns, as well as David Montgomery, who they got from the Bears, has 6 touchdowns. And obviously the stud wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, is going off. But the Lions, the one problem that they had last year was their defense, but now they have the number 1 rush defense, just not great pass defense. They have a plus 1,000 chance to get the 1 seed. And I feel like the only other team that can really compete with the Eagles in the NFC East is obviously the Dallas Cowboys. But the thing that they struggle with on this team is actually the offense, because Tony Pollard averages about 3.9 yards a carry, and Dak Prescott only has 7 total touchdowns, and CeeDee Lamb also only has 1 touchdown, but yet their FanDuel is still putting them up there at plus 550 to get the 1 seed, which I'm very surprised that they're putting them over the Lions, but hey, it's just what FanDuel says.
Just what FanDuel. Jacob giving us the odds, even though he's underage to bet, he's got it all down. So, Jacob, obviously, we know you're a Detroit Lions fan. Right now, you said they're the 4th favorite to get the number 1 seed in the NFC. What do you think is the biggest thing that plays in their favor to get the number 1 seed?
I think what plays in their favor is their strength of schedule. I mean, in their next – I believe throughout the rest of the season they play one team that has a winning record, and it's the Dallas Cowboys in Week 17, the second to last game of the year, as well as the Eagles still have to play the 49ers, and I believe the 49ers already played the Cowboys, and the Eagles still have to play the Cowboys twice. So if you're basing this off strength of schedule, Lions definitely have everybody beat, and the Lions just have a much easier chance to get this 1 seed. And I feel like if you're an Eagles or 49ers fan, I feel like you might be a little bit afraid because, the Lions are just coming right by your tail and they just have a much easier schedule to get to that 1 seed, as well as if their defense keeps playing this well. I mean, we could see one of the best dynasties ever.
After this week, the Eagles obviously play just Commanders, but then they play the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Bills, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Seahawks.
Yeah,
all in
it's
a row.
not easy at all.
So what do you think they how do you think that what do you think they need to do to survive that gauntlet of a schedule to even have a chance at the number 1 seed when they get to the easier part of their schedule, the last 3 games?
You're saying the Eagles, right?
Yeah, what do they have to do? Yep.
Well, I think the only part of this team where they struggle with is, in my opinion, the defense. I mean,
Well,
Jalen.
the run defense is the number 1 run defense in the league right now.
I
But
thought that was the Lions, though.
well, then maybe they're number 2 then. But so what do you think? So it's the back end of the defense you think they need to step
Yeah.
up? Okay. Sounds good. So we'll see if they can do that. And lastly, you said the 49ers, they have a few injuries lined up. They've lost 2 games in a row now, Jacob. Do you think that's just mounting too much injury-wise for the 49ers to get that number 1 seed?
Sorry, what'd you say there?
Do you think the losses and the injuries are just mounting too much for the 49ers to get the number 1 seed? Or
I don't think they're gonna mount them to have like no chance of getting there, but I feel like you obviously still have to give them a chance. I mean, the defense with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, 2 guys that could definitely be in the race for Defensive Player of the Year, as well as assuming that McCaffrey, he was back on Monday night, assuming like he keeps on doing what he does. He already has like 16 games with a touchdown in a row or so like that. I just feel like, yeah, injuries are quite literally the only thing that can stop them from not being successful and getting them up there. The thing is, this team has just dealt with so many injuries over the last couple of years. I don't know if you can trust them to stay healthy. And that's why I feel like if you're the 49ers, you might be a little bit concerned because, I mean, you've just dealt with so many injuries over the last couple of years.
understand. Sounds good, Jacob. Well, thank you for your report on the NFC, bud, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we have Mason coming up next, and he's going to talk about some of those injuries in the NFL, and in particular, one that is popping up for the San Francisco 49ers. Mason?
With the Brock Purdy injury, he has a concussion, and he probably will miss this week. This is huge for the 49ers because Debo won't be getting as much carries as he usually would, but McCaffrey will probably carry the workload against I don't know who they play, but he'll still get the workload. I think the defense will have to carry for whoever they're playing, and also, we're gonna go to the Dolphins. With Tyreek Hill is questionable for this week. He's been probably the offensive player of the year in the AFC, and he's been really dominant, and he's has a little injury going on. So, and then also T.J. Hawkinson and the Vikings. Right now, that's the only target that they have besides like Jordan Addison, and I think Kirk Cousins will struggle this week.
All right, Mason. So thank you for the injury reports. Let's talk about each one of them real quick. The San Francisco 49ers have been dealing with injuries to their best offensive weapons. Now they're dealing with injury to the most important offensive player, the quarterback. They're playing the Cincinnati Bengals, who have been an up and down team this week. How do you think they can? Do you think they can survive against what is a pretty good Cincinnati defense? And after losing 2 games in a row without Brock Purdy,
I think the Cincinnati defense will do okay, but McCaffrey will get a few chunk plays, and then the 49ers probably edge it out by like 2 or 3.
okay, sounds good. I'm sure the defense for Cincinnati will be loading the box against Christian McCaffrey, but he's obviously elusive. Tyreek Hill, like you said, is probably the offensive player of the year, if not just in the AFC, maybe the whole NFL right now, for the Miami Dolphins. His Miami Dolphins are coming off their second loss of the season and kind of a one-sided game, but they do get to face the Patriots this week. So do you think it's a good idea for maybe them to hold out their offensive MVP so far, considering the depth they have at the weapons positions?
I think they should bench him, but if the game is like really close, they'll put him in. But like they won't put him out for the first and second quarter. They'll probably put him in the third or fourth.
Okay, kind of what Atlanta Falcons did with Bijan last week, but that obviously didn't work out for them. And so finally, the last one you talked about, T.J. Hawkinson. They already have their best maybe the best wide receiver in football out. And Justin Jefferson, he's still out with his injuries. They go to Lambeau to play one of the rivals, the Packers, this week. If you had to say, all right, well, they don't have their top two options, who are they going to have to lean on offensively? And Kirk Cousins, he's been chucking the football over the field. Do you think they have to run the ball a little more, or do you think they can depend on their backup wide receivers?
I think Jordan Addison will have a big night. But they will have to lean on Cam Akers and Madison.
Yeah, Addison had a huge week this last week too. Thank you so much, Mason. We appreciate you talking about the NFL and your injuries and keeping us up to date. All right, so we move on from the NFL to college football, where we're going to have Walter Aston preview who are the big players in the college football playoff potential so far. Walter?
Walter Aston here for Student Sports Network, and the topic today is what teams currently have the best shot to make the CFP. Currently, the only undefeated teams left for Power 5 teams are Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, Washington, and Oklahoma. But other teams may have shots that have one loss in Texas, Oregon, Penn State, and Alabama. Because teams like Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, or Florida State could possibly lose because they all have big games coming up and they could possibly lose. So does Washington and Oklahoma. I think Texas, Oregon, Penn State, Alabama all have other shots, even though they're not undefeated. But the teams that look like they're going to make it right now is just Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida State.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. The question that kind of obviously the first one, and we're going to get to this a little bit more, who can stay undefeated? Florida State doesn't play another ranked team the rest of the year. What matchup is it? The Miami matchup? Is the Florida matchup? Either of those matchups seem like they could trip up the Florida State Seminoles?
I think it's probably going to be the Miami matchup. They're a really good team. I mean, they definitely messed up against Georgia Tech with not kneeling it, but I think they're a really well team all around. I think they do have a shot at beating Florida State, but I don't think they will. But I think to choose a team that could beat them, I think it would definitely be Miami.
All right, sounds good. And then if you think that Ohio State and Michigan, obviously they have to play each other, only one of them can win the Big Ten. Who do you think the team that jumps into the top four would be? Would you prefer it to be Washington out of the Pac-12 or Oklahoma? Both teams are in the last year in their respective conferences now in the Big 12. So is it the Pac-12 Washington Huskies or Oklahoma Sooners, you think, jumping in for that last spot if Michigan and Ohio State knock each other out?
If they can stay undefeated, Washington and Oklahoma, then I definitely think Washington can make it. Michael Penix has been playing amazing. I don't think Oklahoma's going to stay undefeated. I think they will lose to TCU. But there's also other teams like Penn State, Alabama that could definitely jump up to that spot if either Michigan or Ohio State loses, or Texas or Oregon.
Yeah, Penn State would have to have a big win over Michigan, and Alabama would have to find a way to win out and get that the SEC title. But we'll see what happens. Thank you for your opinions and your facts you got for us on college football, Walter. And now we're going to focus on one part of college football even more as we focus with Donnie and the Big Ten. Donnie, what do you have for us on the Big Ten, especially the two teams you just talked about, Ohio State?
All right, so Michigan, their remaining schedule, they have Purdue. They have a bye this week. They go to Purdue. Then they play Penn State in Happy Valley. Then they play Maryland. And then they have the Ohio State game, which they get to host this year. They do have the best defense in the FBS, allowing 5.88 points per game. In all offense, they have a dynamic duo at running back, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards leading the charge. And J.J. McCarthy is a great dual threat quarterback for them to lead their offense. There is a sign-stealing scandal going on with Michigan that a staffer bought tickets to opponents' games to try to steal their signs. But I'm not sure what's wrong with stealing signs because that's a part of every sport that everyone tries to do. Ohio State, they play Wisconsin, Rutgers, Michigan State, Minnesota, and then they have to go into Ann Arbor to take on Michigan. Ohio State does have 2 top 10 wins against Purdue and Notre Dame, and they do have one of the best draft prospects, Marvin Harrison Jr., paired with Kyle McCord. They're having extreme success in the receiving core there.
They are. We saw how well Marvin Harrison Jr. did in this big game last week against Penn State. He is, I don't know how he's not higher in the Heisman candidacy, but he's having a great year and maybe the number one overall prospect in all of college football. Donnie, you talked about that sign stealing scandal, and I think I kind of agree with you. Why is it a big deal, Donnie? Because it feels like all the athletes that are on national media are saying, I feel like every team does this and tries to steal signs. It's just part of competition. Do you think it's going to have any more effect, or do you think it's going to kind of go away in the next couple weeks for Michigan?
Yeah, so with NCAA scandals, they usually take over like a year to actually impact stuff. So I would assume that if anything happens with it, it would happen next year, so it wouldn't affect anything this season. But I could see some potential consequences. And with Jim Harbaugh already under fire with the suspension that he had earlier in this year for the COVID scouting things that they had, I could see more trouble heading for Michigan in the next couple of years, but nothing major happening this year.
All right, well, that's good to hear, because even though I'm not a Michigan or Ohio State fan, everybody looks forward to the big game at the end of the year between those two that usually determines the Big Ten champion. Do you think they're both going to go undefeated heading into that game, Donnie? And then who do you think has the advantage? Like you said, it's in Ann Arbor, in the Big House. Who do you think has the advantage this year?
I think that both teams will remain undefeated going into that game. Ohio State has a pretty easy schedule leading up to it. Michigan's big test is going to Penn State, playing in Happy Valley there. Then they have 1 week, then they host Ohio State. And in the game, I think that Michigan has the advantage. They have one of the best crowds in college football. They have one of the best offenses. They scored like almost 50 points 3 games in a row now. They have one of the best defenses in college football, like possibly of all time, allowing like less than a touchdown over midway through the season. Ranked number 2 in the country. I feel like Michigan is going to win that game. And then the winner of that will probably win the conference and go into the college football playoff.
All right, sounds great, Donnie. We really appreciate your information on the Big Ten, bud. Thank you. All right, so we go from football playoffs in the NFL, football playoffs in college football, and now other football playoffs. Well, the rest of the world calls it football. It's soccer. And the MLS playoffs start up tonight. So with a preview of a little bit of the MLS, but most importantly, the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, St. Louis City. We have Ashton. Ashton, tell us about what's going on in the MLS.
Hello, my name is Ashton Fry. Today I'm with the Play-by-Play Student Sport Network, reporting to you in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, the topic is St. Louis City, SC. So they lost their previous game, 2-0 against Seattle Sounders. But however, that did not affect them from being the first in the Eastern Conference. They are the first, in MLS history, they are the first team to succeed this. I think that's pretty crazy. And it also claimed them a spot in the 2024 CONCACAF Champions Cup, as well as playoffs. Their next match is the playoffs on October 29th at 9 p.m. at City Park, where they will either face their rivals, Kansas City, or they will face San Jose Earthquakes.
All right, Ashton. Well, yeah, fantastic job by St. Louis City to be an expansion team and get the number 1 seed in the conference in their first year. That's amazing. And like you said, they have a chance to face their rival in Sporting Kansas City in the first round. Do you think they prefer to play the rival, or do you think they want a little calmer atmosphere against San Jose? Who do you think the team would prefer to play?
I think they'd rather want to play San Jose Earthquakes, but with them playing Sporting Kansas City, I mean, that drives an insane crowd. So I kind of want Sporting KC, but I kind of don't, because, you know, they're a great team, but so is San Jose. Yep. And then their last game, I think they just won against Sporting KC, and that kind of, I think that got them a little high in the heads, but yeah.
We'll see what happens. Obviously, playoffs is a different environment. How do you think the environment's going to be there? First year, first playoff game, or how are the fans looking forward to it?
It's going to be crazy. The fans going to go crazy. Everyone's going to be cheering, standing up the whole time during the game. It's going to be a great environment.
So they obviously had a great regular season, getting the first overall seed in the Western Conference. What do you think, or who do you think are some of the keys for them to succeed in the MLS Cup playoffs?
Oh, for sure. Roman Berkey, he's their goalkeeper. He is fantastic. He's saved free kicks. He saved everything, basically. They also have Tim Parker. He's an incredible center defender. They have Gioacchini. They have Klaus. I mean, they're stacked with fantastic players, and they look like they've been playing for years now.
What do you think is, last question, what do you think has enabled them to come in year one and have this much success?
I think from a coaching standpoint, Coach Bradley Cornell has done a fantastic job by holding this team together. And the players, they've gelled correctly. So that's why they're playing so well.
Awesome. Sounds good, Ashton. Well, good luck to St. Louis City in the playoffs, and we'll see if they can shock the world in their first year and win the Cup. All right. So this has been Around the World of Student Sports with the Student Sports Network here, Play by Play. Feel free to subscribe, like, share, comment, all that fun stuff. And if you want to get involved with the Student Sports Network, message us on Instagram at Play by Play Camps, and we will have a Student Sports Network Instagram coming soon. Thank you for watching the Around the World of Sports. We really appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Take care.
The Play by Play Student Sports Network. The best students of sports.